The Deadliest Outlaws of the Wild West. This is a cartoonish video, but who gives a f***, because it's going over the Deadliest Outlaws of the Wild West, and that seems interesting to me.
Let's start with the dangerous and slowly work our way towards the most deadly outlaws on the list.
I don't know of any outlaws in the Wild West. Chat, name an outlaw in the Wild West, and don't say Arthur Morgan. A one that actually existed. Bonnie and Clyde, are they outlaws? They were bank robbers. Oh, Billy the Kid. Yeah, Billy the Kid. That's like the only one that I know. It was easier to be a criminal in the Wild West because everything was so far apart. No one ever recognized you. There were no cameras, no fingerprints. It was a lot easier to just walk into a bank with a gun, take their shit, leave, and never come back. And so stories would be told about outlaws, and they would draw pictures and show them to try and find who they were, because it was a lot harder to find criminals back in the fucking crossing the United States days. When was the Wild West? Like the 1700s? 1607? 1607 to 1912. Oh, it was a very long period. The period that most people remember Wild West characters in was the mid to late 1800s.
Number 10, Clay Allison. Clay Allison was nothing short of a wild man, a notorious gun.
Yo, they always have like the most random ass fucking photo. Like, what the is that actually him?
Fighter who earned a reputation for being extremely violent. Like in 1870, when Allison led an angry mob to the local jail to break out a man named Charles Kennedy, who had recently been convicted of murder. He would break him out of his cell, only to lynch the man himself.
What? So he got everybody to be like, that guy was wrongly imprisoned. And they went, hell yeah, let's go get him out. And then they got him out and hung him.
But for Allison, the man was not dead enough. So he began to decapitate the man as well, placing his head on a stake and proudly displaying it at the local saloon, which of course traumatized all of the children who were coming in for a drink. Allison was such a wild man that he would oftentimes be seen riding his horse through town, completely naked, with nothing but his pistol on his hip.
But dude, are these real people though? Like, that's a real guy. Like, he was butt naked, riding a horse, decapitated a guy. Like, how do they not die? They always die young, though. Like, I feel like every one of these stories, it's going to be like, yeah, Clay Allison, he had a long career. He died when he was 24. He started robbing when he was 12. You'd be like, holy shit, what the fuck?
But my favorite incident was when Allison accepted a dinner with a man named Chunk Colbert. Chunk was a notorious gunfighter who was rumored to have killed 7 men up to this point. And it was no secret that Chunk wanted nothing more than to see Allison dead. Now, of course.
So they ate dinner together and then did a gunfight? Yo, I would so cheat in a gunfight. They're dead. What are they gonna fuck? If some guy goes, yeah, I'm challenging you to a fucking shoot off. 10 paces and then we shoot. 1, 2, I turn around and shoot him in the fucking head. I ain't doing one shot either. I'm gonna be going bang, 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 and then fucking and then I walk away. Challenge you to a duel. Yeah, then other people kill you. That's what it is. Because other people watch, and if you cheat, they'll kill you.
Of course, Allison knew this, but he still accepted Chunk's dinner invitation nonetheless. While in the middle of eating dinner, out of nowhere, Chunk would jump out of his chair and quickly drawing his gun to shoot Allison dead, only to hit the edge of the table with his pistol, which prevented him from raising it up any further. And in one swift motion, Allison drew his weapon, shooting Chunk between the eyes. When asked by the locals,
what?
Why on earth would he ever accept dinner with a man he knew wanted to kill him? To which he replied, because I didn't want to send a man to hell on an empty stomach.
Damn.
Number 9.
Yo, that's kind of badass, though.
Cherokee Bill. Crawford Goldsby, or better known as Cherokee.
Bro, like that, like this kid gotta be like 15 and killed like 400 people. Like, that's what it's gonna keep getting into. We're gonna see one of these pictures, it's gonna be a toddler. They called him Salty Dan. Salty Dan killed 5 people before he turned 4.
Was an infamous outlaw who was responsible for the murder of 8 to 13 men.
What?
Bill would become an outlaw in 1894 at the age of 18, when he would confront a man that had beaten up his brother. But once he was face to face with him, he realized he didn't want to get beat up as well. So he would just end up shooting the man instead.
Oh my God.
And from this point on, he would live the rest of his life on the run as a wanted criminal. Shortly after this incident, Cherokee Bill would join an outlaw group called the Cook Gang, which specialized in robbing banks, trains, and stagecoaches. Cherokee Bill's crime spree was long and involved many heinous crimes. But to better understand this man's insane...
Bro, you could deadass get away with any crime in, like, the 1800s. Like, you could kill someone and then just go over to the next town. And, like, okay, maybe not the next town. Maybe, like, a few towns over. Like, a 30-minute drive, and they're never gonna see you. Like, it's just like, what the fuck? What crime would you commit? Oh, I'll rob a bank, dude. Oh, my God. If I could fucking... because I know some of the outlaws were, like, chill. Where they would... Because they used to have debt only on paper. Like, now, if you're in debt to a bank, they fucking have that everywhere. Like, you can't wipe people's debt clean. But people that would rob banks in the 1800s would walk into the bank, rob the bank, and then rip up all the debt bills and leave. And so yeah, they'd steal some of your money, but at the end of the day, like, now nobody's in debt because they would just fucking rip all that shit up.
Let's just take a look at a small section of his crime spree, starting with June 17th, 1894, when Bill shot and killed Deputy Sheriff Sequoia Houston in a gunfight. Then 1 month later, Bill would even clock in for holiday pay, shooting and killing 2 men on the 4th of July. Then 2 days later, on July 6th, he was rumored to have killed a railroad worker. Then a few weeks later, on July 30th, Bill and the Cook Gang robbed the Lincoln County Bank in the Oklahoma Territory. As you can see, Bill's crimes were non-stop, and they would continue at this pace until the day he was caught, which came on January 31st, 1895. But even in jail, Bill's Silvertooth activities would continue, as he somehow managed to get his...
1895. Like, that sounds a long time ago. That's like 50 years before some of y'all's grandparents were born. Like, your grandparents' grandparents were alive when Cherokee Bill was just stepping into a fucking saloon and shooting people in the face. Like, that wasn't that long ago. I mean, like, yeah, it's fucking over 100 years ago. Like, it's a long time. But I'm saying, comparatively, there's people alive now that have grandparents that were alive when he was alive.
And in an attempt to escape, he would end up shooting a jail guard in the stomach and back. But it would all be for nothing, as he would be locked back up in his cell. And on March 17th, 1896, Cherokee Bill, the most infamous outlaw of the time, would be hung for his crimes. And just moments before his execution, he was asked if he had any last words, to which he replied, "I came here to die, not make a speech." Which is just a...
Yo, how do they all have hard-ass lines? How do they all... Yo, no way all of them have, like, some fucking aura, like, some cold-ass... Yeah, bitch, I came here to die. Not give a speech. Kill me. Like, what? I would be like, I don't know what to say. Let's get it over with. Like, some shit like that. Like, what the fuck? Do you think they thought about it beforehand? Like, do you think Cherokee Bill was sitting in his cell just like, all right, the guy's going to ask me what I want to say. What's like a badass line that I could probably tell him? Nowadays, people just start quoting, like, animes or some shit. Nobody would be unique. If there were outlaws today and you got executed, somebody would just pull out, like, a line straight out of, like, fucking Death Note or some shit. I guess the search for the One Piece was the friends we made along the way. And then he dies.
Number 8, George Parrott. Now, most of the outlaws from the Wild West had some of the coolest nicknames. Names like Billy the Butcher, Shotgun John Collins, Pistol Pete.
Pistol Pete's a badass name.
James Wild Bill Hickok.
Boring.
Kevin Black Eye McLuffin. Texas Jack. Bronco Bill.
Yo, no way he's just pointing at a sword right now. Or is that a gun? Is he just pointing his fucking pointer finger at the sword right now?
The Kentucky Cannibal.
How old is that photo? Like, that looks like that has to be from, like, 1805. That's, dude, the photo looks dirty. And what's so crazy is that's not what the world looked like. You always look at these pictures and you're like, damn, dude, everything looks so old. But, like, their world looked just like ours. And I know that's obvious, but in my head when I was a kid, I used to watch black and white films and think to myself that that was the world.
But my point is, most outlaws had really cool names. But sadly for George Parrott, he got stuck with one of, if not the worst one, as he would be known as Big Nose George, or Big Beak
Yeah, don't press my man Big Nose George. You don't walk on him like that. You don't talk shit on Big Nose George like that. That's a badass nickname.
Parrott. And with a nickname like that, it's no surprise
Big Beak Parrot, that's bad.
that the man was very angry and went on to commit some of the most disgusting crimes, from robbing trains, stagecoaches, and cattle to the classic Wild West pastime, cold-blooded murder. And after many years of crime, it would all eventually come to an end. On August of 1878, Big Nose George and his gang would attempt to derail a train in Wyoming by removing a stake from the tracks. But to their surprise, they would be
Yo, what do you think his gang members were called? They had Big Nose Pete, Earlobe Larry, One-Eyed Willie. That looks like an infant. That's...
spotted by a railroad worker. Knowing that they had been identified, they quickly fled to
Baby Bob.
Rattlesnake Canyon. But what they didn't know is that the gang was being followed by two lawmen. These two lawmen had a very unique set of skills, as they were specially trained to track criminals down. And as they began to track the
Is he
faint
licking the fucking ground?
footprints left by the gang's horses, they would eventually arrive at Rattlesnake Canyon, where they were easily spotted and murdered. After these killings, a large bounty of $20,000 was placed on George's head, which is over $600,000
What? Oh my god, 600K to find him?
in today's money. But it wouldn't be until 1880 that George
Yo, being a bounty hunter was like an actual career back then.
would finally be captured. Once in jail, things would take a shocking
How do you even find him though? Yo, that's like some Sherlock Holmes shit where you're like smoking a pipe, you're a bounty hunter smoking a pipe, sitting in a rocking chair, like reviewing the 4 pieces of information in a photo. You go, I know, let's go to the local bar. And then he's just there because you live in the Wild West and there's 10 people that live in your town.
when George would get his hands on a pocket knife and sawing off his shackles, which he used to smack the jailkeeper over the head and fracturing his skull, only to be held at gunpoint by the jailkeeper's angry wife, who was obviously very disgusted with what she saw.
Did she
Her
kill him?
once ugly husband was now ugly and deformed. News quickly began to spread of George's escape attempt, and a large group of 200 people would rally and come to his rescue, breaking him out of his cell. Once he was set free, a rope was quickly tied around his neck and he was lynched. It turns out
Why
the
did they just shoot him?
group was an angry mob. George's skull was then used as an ashtray for many years, and his skin was used for a pair of shoes.
Wait, what?
George's skull was then used as an ashtray for many years, and his skin was used for a pair of shoes.
They made shoes out of his skin and his skull to fucking put out cigarettes?
Both his skull and shoes are now
What? Oh my god, Big Nose George was a horse thief bandit. 1881, a mob of vigilantes lynched him in downtown Rollins.
proudly displayed in museums. Number 7. Bill.
Yo, why can we not take field trips to that shit when I was in fucking 3rd grade? Why do I have to go to the most boring ass museums in the fucking world? Why can't I go to one where I read some shit and it just said, yeah, Big Nose Bob. He used to steal horses and kill people, and then the townspeople got mad and fucked his shit up and then put cigarettes out in his skull. Like, I'd be like, damn.
Bill Doolin. Bill Doolin was an outlaw and founder of the Wild Bunch Gang. They were responsible for multiple crimes, from robberies to outright murder. Doolin's crime spree mostly took place in the Oklahoma and Indian Territory and lasted from 1892 through 1896. But it wouldn't take long for the Wild Bunch to become one of the wealthiest and most powerful gangs in all of the Wild West, amassing an estimated value of $165,000, which would be over $5 million
Damn. They really made money like that.
in today's money. Now, depending on when you're watching this video, that's about the price of a really nice single-family home or the price of a used pickup truck. The gang was so successful at robbing trains and banks, the states had no choice but to place large bounties on all of the members. They were wanted dead or alive. And by 1895, most...
But do you think the people that had bounties on them had people actively looking for them? Or was it like you're drinking at a bar and you just see that guy and fucking kill him? I feel like that's how they usually would have died. Like, the majority of the guys that have bounties on them, it's like you know of the bounty and you don't really do anything about it. But then if you just, like, stumble across him, you're like, holy shit, if I kill this guy, I make fucking 100 grand.
Most of its members had been killed, either by lawmen or bounty hunters who were out seeking the reward. Bill himself would be captured and jailed on January 15th, 1896. But just 6 months into his jail sentence, he would manage to get his hands on a revolver, sticking up one of the jail guards and forcing him to unlock the jail door and escaping, leading to a massive manhunt that would end with Bill being cornered inside of a farm. Surrounded by lawmen, he was
did he kill himself?
ordered to come out peacefully. And a few moments later, Bill would walk out and shooting at everyone that surrounded him, only to be instantly put down with a shotgun blast. It turns out that a 1v20 is never a good idea. Number 6, Jim Miller. James Brown Miller, or better known as Killin' Jim or Killer Miller,
Bro,
was
they
an
always have like the mob photos. Like, this guy's wearing a long ass trench coat, a top hat, holding a fucking cigar.
outlaw, a professional hitman, and a lawman.
In elementary school, they would take us to Jamestown and tell us we were standing on mass graves of cannibalized settlers. What? I never did that shit.
Killin' Jim was a notorious gunman who is considered one of, if not the most violent man of the Wild West. It's estimated that he killed a minimum of 12 men, but some reports claim that the number could have been as high as 50. Those reports, of course,
How the hell do you not know the fucking like that's not a range, dude. 10 to 50?
coming from Jim himself, which we can all agree is genius marketing. Now, some of these killings were justified as they were committed against criminals early on while he was a lawman. The others, on the other hand, were just unlucky, as those were just outright cold-blooded murder, with most of those taking place once he switched sides and becoming a notorious hitman, charging $150 per hit, which is about...
Dude. Give me 150 and I'll fucking kill him for you. Obviously, that's before inflation, but still.
$5,000.
That's not a lot. That's not a lot. I thought he was going to say $150 today was like 40 grand. $5K to fucking kill someone? That is not worth it. That's still cheap. $5 grand in today's money. Chat, how much is a reasonable price for a hitman to get paid? Like $1 million, dude. Like $1 million. Like, if I don't know. Just in today, back then, it was also probably less because, like, the odds that you got caught and the risk was lower. But still, like, for you to just kill someone, I feel like today, like, $1 mil, man. Like, $1 mil. 500K, 20K, 10K. You think $10,000 is a reasonable amount to kill somebody? That is not even 1/3 of what the average American makes in a year. That's like 4 months' income to murder someone.
In today's money. And for the next few years, Jim was hired to kill many men. And in 1908, he would get hired by 3 wealthy men to kill a former deputy U.S. Marshal named Allen Augustus. The plan was simple. Pay Jim $1,000.
The plan's simple. Walk up to him and shoot him because no one had protection back then.
$700 to kill Allen. And once he...
Did the fucking U.S. presidents have protection back in, like, the 1800s? Like, who was president in, like, 1850? Millard Fillmore. Did Millard Fillmore have, like, bodyguards, or did he just walk around? Like, were people actively trying to kill the president then?
Jim would ambush Allen on his property, shooting him twice with a shotgun. As Allen was left to die on the floor, his wife would run to the scene. And in his final words, he would manage the strength to say the name Jim Miller. Soon, Jim and the 3 men that hired him were captured and
Wow! In his last breath, he said the guy that killed him?
they were all taken into custody to await trial. But word quickly began to spread that there wouldn't be enough evidence to convict the men for this crime, so the townspeople would take justice into their own hands.
Oh my god, and storm the prison and hang them? Is that like a common occurrence in the 1800s?
Breaking all 4 men out of their cells
What
and
the fuck?
dragging them to a nearby barn, placing all of them on a platform with a rope around their necks. As the other 3 men cried and begged for their lives, Jim
Don't tell me Jim's gonna say some hard line. Stop. Stop.
showed no emotion. He was just eager to get the show over and done with, yelling, "Let her rip!" and
Involuntarily jumping off. Oh my god. I was gonna say let her rip isn't that badass. He fucking killed himself. He literally said let her rip and then jumped off and hung himself because they were trying to execute him. What the fuck, man?
voluntarily stepping off his platform to hang himself. The rest of the men were not so brave and would be taken care of by the angry mob. Number 5, Sam Bass.
What the fuck, dude? Not one of them have been like, no, please.
Sam Bass was an infamous train robber and the leader of a gang called the Sam Bass Gang, a gang that would become famous when they pulled off the largest train robbery in American history. But before we get to that,
Is that what some of Red Dead Redemption's based off of? Because some of what these guys are saying, I feel like you do in Red Dead. Like, you do the train robbery in Red Dead.
believe it or not, Sam tried to live an honest life, working many jobs. He was a cattle wrangler, a horse racer, an advertising sign spinner.
Back then?
Okay, one of those I might have made up.
Oh.
At one point, he would even work for the railroads, where he would load goods onto the carts. Sam could have continued to live an honest life if it wasn't for his gambling addiction, in which he accumulated enormous debts that he could not pay off, which is what led him to a life of crime. He would begin by robbing stagecoaches, but eventually he would put together a gang that would specialize in robbing trains. Using the knowledge he acquired while working for the train companies, he managed to pull off 4 consecutive train robberies outside of Dallas, Texas. But in 1878, Sam and his gang would pull off the greatest train robbery of
Bro, this really could have been me, though, back then. Dude, if you got in debt like that, you literally could just go, all right, well, now I'm gonna go rob a train to pay it off.
when they managed to rob a Union Pacific train, stealing $60,000 worth of gold, a value that is close to $2 million in today's currency. And after this robbery, the gang would immediately split up for good. The following year in
I mean, that's good, though, right? They do the last heist and then just fucking dip.
1878, Sam must have gotten bored of being retired and rich. So he would put together,
They got away with it, and they're trying to do it again.
and on July 19th of the same year, they would attempt to rob a bank in Round Rock, Texas. A robbery that would have been successful if there hadn't been an outlaw turned informant in his gang. And once the gang arrived at the bank, a shootout broke out. With his gang being shot and killed, Sam would take off on his horse, escaping town. The following day, Sam would be found helplessly laying in a pasture north of town, covered in his own blood from a bullet wound he suffered the day before. He would be rushed back to town, where he would die the following day.
Damn.
Number 4, John.
All right, that's the only one that's not that badass, but I mean, like, he couldn't really do anything about that. Maybe he did say some hard-ass shit.
John Wesley Hardin had to have been the most psychopathic killer of the Wild West, committing his first crime as a child when he stabbed a classmate after a fight. Then in 1868, at the age of 15,
They had school then?
he would take it a step further when he began to argue with the man, but not wanting to risk being wrong, he would quickly settle the argument by shooting and killing the man instead.
When he was 15.
After the murder,
So he already stabbed somebody when he was a kid. And then when he was 15, he argued with a guy and said, I'm not wrong, and then killed him.
he would go full Jason Bourne, killing 3 Union soldiers who tried to arrest him.
Wow.
And in 1871, while traveling up the Chisholm Trail, he killed another 7 people, then 3 more in Abilene, Kansas. And in the coming years, he would add an additional 4 men to his death list. By 1878, Hardin had killed at least 20 men, but some reports speculate that it could be as high as 40. The murder of a former state policeman and a sheriff would be the ones to get him arrested. John Wesley Hardin would then serve the next 14 long years inside of a Texas prison. After serving his time, he would eventually be released.
Don't tell me he immediately goes back to killing people.
And in 1895, in El Paso, Texas, Hardin's girlfriend would get arrested for carrying a pistol. Hardin exploded with anger, threatening to kill the officer who had arrested his girl. A few hours later, Hardin would be spotted at the local saloon shooting dice, when a man walked behind him and shooting him in the back of the head.
What the fuck? They just kill people randomly.
He would be dead before he ever knew what was happening. The man who had shot and killed him was the same officer he had threatened a few hours earlier.
Wow, just in different clothes? The cop didn't even arrest the guy. He just fucking walked up to him and shot him.
The officer simply did not want to take the chance to end up on Hardin's death list.
Yeah, but I know the Wild West is usually inaccurately depicted. Like, these are, like, the specific people. I know there was still a lot of shit that went on, but, like, it wasn't a very common occurrence for people to just duel and kill each other. Like, people died a lot, but for the most part, you're not just going to sit in, like, a casual bar in the Wild West and just witness fucking 5 people get shot in the face.
As for the officer, an El Paso jury would end up acquitting him for the murder of Hardin, as they felt that he had done the town a favor. Number 3, Jesse James. Jesse James is perhaps the most famous
I know Jesse James West, yeah.
outlaw of the Wild West. James' appetite for violence began at the very young age of 16, when he joined a guerrilla group called the Bushwhackers, which is not at all what it sounds like. The Bushwhackers were a pro-Confederate guerrilla warfare unit during the Civil War and carried out some of the most atrocious crimes against Union
fitness influencer? No, not that guy.
Soldiers and
same name, different dude.
Anyone who supported them. Let's just take a quick look at 2 of these incidents. Beginning with the Lawrence Massacre of 1863 in Kansas, where 150 unarmed men and boys were killed. Then there was the Centralia Massacre of 1864 in Missouri, where 24 unarmed soldiers were executed. A young Jesse James took part in both of these incidents. But now that you know exactly—
So they just ran in town and started shooting people and then left and did it multiple more times.
Who Jesse James is, let's continue. After the Civil War had ended, Jesse, his brother Frank, and some former Confederate guerrillas would come together, creating a gang called James Younger Gang, which would soon become the most—
What a dumb name for a gang. I feel like we're going to witness the first bad death sentence.
The gang would first begin by robbing banks, trains, and stagecoaches. Now, the reason this gang was
Chat, what would your Wild West gang name be?
so feared was, well—
You got to do something simple. Simple but memorable. The toe choppers. You cut off everybody. You cut off their toes, right? They get— so it's like it like breeds fear because they know that if you fuck with me, like I'll cut off your feet.
hesitated to kill anyone who got in their way. The door guy at the bank. The bank teller. The man who just happened to walk into the bank while they were robbing it.
They didn't even, like, tell him he could just fucking leave. They just killed everybody and took their shit.
The little orphan who previously got squished crossing the road in my second video.
Oh my god.
The James Younger Gang terrorized the U.S. from 1869 through 1879, robbing over 20 banks and countless trains during this time. Now, the crazy part is that Jesse James and his gang were treated like local celebrities, since they were seen as standing up for the Confederate movement. They were constantly sensationalized and romanticized in the newspaper.
No. Oh, hell no.
Which garnered them a ton of local support. It actually got so out of hand that when the gang
So they were just a group of a bunch of racist guys that killed people.
robbed the banks and stagecoaches, crowds would begin to form and watch from the sidelines, hoping to get a peek. But after 10 long years of crime, the gang would finally dwindle down, as many of the members began to die in shootouts. And by 1879, only Jesse and his brother remained. With the bounty on Jesse's head becoming larger and larger, he would ask the Ford brothers to move in with him, as the brothers were the only 2 people he trusted, as they had been members of his gang in the past. They agreed to move in. And on the morning of April 3rd,
Did they kill him?
1882, while James was hanging a picture frame up on his wall, one of the brothers shot him in the back of the head. The two brothers collected the reward money shortly after and were
Yeah, dude, like, there's no, like, the second you get a bounty on you, you can't trust anybody, bro. If you got a crime group, like, why wouldn't they kill you for fucking 10 grand?
Number 2, Billy the Kid. Henry
Only 10K? 10K back then.
McCarty, or better known as Billy the Kid, was an outlaw and a deadly gunfighter. Billy the Kid's life would dramatically change in 1874 at the age of 15, when his mother would die from tuberculosis. Their stepfather, not wanting to raise Billy and his brother alone,
Just
would
left
end up
them?
abandoning them,
What?
leaving both of the boys orphans. With no one to look after them, they began to steal food to survive. Eventually, Billy would be caught by police for his robberies and placed inside of a local jail. During the night, Billy somehow managed to shimmy up the cell chimney and escaping from his cell. And from this day to the day that he died, Billy would remain a wanted fugitive. For the next few years, he would join multiple gangs, committing many crimes, from robberies to murder. He would even be arrested several times. But by the early 1870s, Billy would settle down working an honest job as a cowboy for a man named John Tunstall. John was a businessman who had many enemies in the business world.
And he killed him for him? I don't actually know the story of Billy the Kid. I just know who Billy the Kid is.
In 1878, with the help of the town's sheriff, those enemies sent a large group of men to seize John's cattle. As John went to confront the men, the group would end up shooting
Billy just stood out there and fucking shot all of them. Billy just got out there and fucking killed all their asses.
him in the chest, knocking him off his horse. As he laid on the floor, one of the men would walk over to him and executing him with a shot to the back of the head. Little did these men know, they had all but sealed their fates. This incident would mark the start.
Oh my god, because Billy was actually trying to have a regular life, and then these motherfuckers come in and fuck it up. So he goes on a fucking rampage, hunts him down like John Wick, like fucking Taken, like the goddamn movies. But he was before the movies.
Group called the Regulators was created. The group's goal was simple. They swore to kill every single man that took part in John's murder. Billy the
Wow.
Kid was one of those members. It didn't take long for the Regulators to begin getting their revenge. Starting by
Yo, imagine hearing that news. Imagine being like a group of 10 guys that was an enemy of a dude and you kill him. And then one by one, you just keep getting letters that every one of your friends is dead. And this group is like trying to find you. And like now there's like eight out of the 10 dead, and there's only 2 left, and you're like, holy fucking shit. I'd start fucking, I'd make a boat. I'd make a boat, and I'd fucking start paddling to a goddamn different country.
gunmen
I'm walking to Mexico.
murder John. And in 1878, the Regulators would ambush the town's sheriff and his deputies, killing them all in a shootout. The Lincoln County War would last for around a year, with many killings taking place. After the war was over, Billy the Kid would become a wanted man for the murder of the town's sheriff, and in 1880 he would finally be captured and jailed. He would be sentenced to hang for his crimes. But Billy had other plans, and on April 28, 1881, he would get into a fight with one of the jail guards, stealing his revolver and killing him.
Oh my
Then from the
God.
second story, Billy would taunt the second jail guard when he yelled, "Look up, old boy, and see what you get." And the moment the second jail guard looked up, he was blasted with a shotgun that Billy acquired from their office. Billy the Kid had managed to escape from jail once again. A $500 reward would be placed on Billy the Kid.
At 18? 5'7", 125 pounds, light hair, blue eyes, even features, the leader of the worst band of desperados the territory has ever been dealt with. The word above will be paid to his captor, positive proof of his death. Bro, but what if you hunt for him and you kill a guy that just looks like him? Like, has that ever happened? Where they're like, well, this matches the features. You kill a guy and it's not him.
Many men and bounty hunters began to track him down, and on July 14th, 1881, Billy's luck would finally run out when he would be killed by Sheriff Pat Garrett with a shot to his chest. Billy the Kid would go down in history as one of the most legendary outlaws of the Wild West. It's speculated that Billy had killed around 21 men during his short time on Earth, and was just 21 years old at the time of his death.
doing that, but like he did that much and died at 21. Like at the age, you're not even out of college then in fucking average society. This motherfucker, 1 kill per year. No, more than 1 kill per year. He's not killing people when he's 5.
Number 1, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Robert Leroy Parker and Harry Longabaugh are 2 of the most famous outlaws of the Wild West, but most will know them by their nicknames, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The reason why they're both in the number 1 spot is because they would become partners. But before we talk about how they became Wild West legends, let's first cover the origins of Butch Cassidy, the man who would become the leader and founder of the Wild Bunch Gang, a name that was inspired by Bill Doolin's gang, which we covered in the number 7 spot. Butch began committing crimes at an early age, from stealing cattle to minor offenses. But it wouldn't be until June 24th, 1889, that he would cement himself as one of the most brilliant outlaws the world had ever seen, when Butch and 3 others successfully robbed the San Miguel Valley Bank in Colorado, escaping with around $24,000, which is equivalent to around $800,000 today.
Oh my god. Dude, modern day banks don't even have that much money. The amount of cash I mean, it's because everything's online now, comparable to then. But, dude, if you robbed a bank now, you're not getting $800K. Like, if you rob a local bank, how much money do y'all think you're going to get? You're going to get, like, 20 grand. I mean, it's $20,000, but to rob a fucking bank, you're going to get nothing. Because they're going to give you whatever in the tellers. They might have some money in the back. But, like, unless you're going to a big, central, like, vaulted bank, you're going to get nothing. Somebody said local ? Local meaning, like, a chained bank. Like if you go to a Chase Bank or a fucking Wells Fargo or some shit like that. Like those just general banks don't carry a lot of money.
The reason why a robbery this
And
large
you're just going to immediately get arrested because they're going to press a button and then they fucking call the cops on you.
was successful was thanks to Butch's meticulous planning.
You get more money pickpocketing? Yeah, you could steal fucking 6 watches and get more money.
As he scouted the targeted area for weeks, taking every single escape route into consideration. Butch also had custom leather bags made to withstand the weight of the loot that was to be collected. He would also create an escape system where multiple horses would be stationed along the escape route, creating a relay system of fresh horses, guaranteeing that anyone pursuing them would not be able to keep up. Butch simply left nothing to chance. Tactics like this were the reason Butch and the Wild Bunch Gang were successful in robbing multiple banks and trains for over a decade. Now, the most shocking part is that Butch and the Sundance Kid never shot or killed anyone.
But what the fuck do you even do with $800,000 in the Wild West? Nothing's that expensive. A house is a fucking $1. A beer's 10 cents. Like, equivalently, what the fuck? Okay, now you're rich. Now what? You can have alcohol and a home. You still have no technology or air conditioning or electricity, and the cars, you know, kind of starting to come around, but
after a decade of crime and the increasing pressure from law enforcement, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were forced to leave the country, making their way into Bolivia, where they would end up getting into a shootout with Bolivian soldiers, and both Cassidy and the Sundance Kid would end up dying in that battle. The men were then buried together at the local cemetery. Well, at least that's how the story goes. You see, in the 1990s, their bones' DNA was examined and were attempted to be matched with the DNA of their living relatives.
Oh my god, did they fake their own deaths? Did they fake their own deaths?
But there was a problem. Neither of their DNAs were a match. The bodies of the 2 men that supposedly died in a shootout in Bolivia were not Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, with some even speculating that both men survived the night of the shootout and returned back to the United States shortly after, living the rest of their lives as wealthy men under a new identity. They might not have been the most dangerous outlaws of the Wild West.
And they can't even tell anybody
when it comes to killing.
Like, what a badass thing to do. Be like, yeah, I faked my death in Bolivia. No, the fuck you didn't. Yes, the hell I did. Then you say who you are, and then they fucking get you.
But as far as the banks, the trains, and the government work...
Same thing with, like, dude, witness protection. Do you ever get to tell anyone? If you're under witness protection today, and you say, you know, say I have to go under witness protection, and I change my name to Donald or fucking Bill. If you end up getting married, or do you ever tell that person it's like, I lived an entirely different life where I was put under so much danger that the FBI had to reassign me a new identity to where I'd be able to live without being killed? Like, do you ever say that? Or do you die having your partner believe that your current name is your actual name when in reality it's not even you? Wow. W fucking mid. I have to piss, and then we're gonna hop into the next one.